reconvene this budget work session of the Town Council, March 23rd, 2023. We'll convene with a citizens forum. If there are any citizens here that would like to share their thoughts with us, now is the time for that. We'll let the record show that there is not anyone here to speak. And we'll move right into discussion. Just so folks are aware, our department heads and staff down there have got their own microphones, so they can speak to us from down there, and it shouldn't be a problem.
It's like karaoke over there.
With that, looks like we're moving right into the debt schedule. And I assume there might be some opening remarks, or, you know, who knows?
What I've prepared is what I was talking about last Thursday night. I've talked a number of times about paying down the debt and what I felt was an effective way to do that. And so I printed up this document for you to kind of show some of the numbers and how they could move and how we could pay off the 2012 bond, the ARRA bond, and the monies that would move back into our operating budget, and then how we could move, with those monies back in, move off interest we were using in the budget, which is far higher than we've used in the past, and end up with roughly $183,000 in discretionary council use. Now, we've talked about this before in council, where the interest being earned by our funds balance and our bank accounts exceeded the interest that we were paying out on our debt. But we still got $1.5 million going out the door every year, and roughly right now about $720 coming in from the interest. The funds balance that Steve mentioned Thursday night was, in some cases, money left over from prior years that was not executed for a variety of reasons, or, as we've had this year, projections exceeded expectations. But the stack of projects that needed to be done with that money remained. And while the interest and on our funds and our debt are in the 5 and below range, the projects have increased in cost exponentially, upwards of 300%. So even if we could not cover all the projects that we've got listed with the funds balance now. A way to multiply that money, if we start to use it for our projects, is to continue what we're doing with state and federal funds to augment that so that we can do more with the funds balance. So you'll see that from the beginning of fiscal year 23 through the end of January of this year, we accumulated $256,500 in interest. Now, that rate is because during that time we kept getting these jumps from the Fed. Of that, we used $121,000 for the cost of living adjustment, the career progression, the pivot track, IT upgrade, and that left us with $135,260. The remaining balance on the 2012 bond is $1,098,000. So we take that minus the $123,700, which is our budgeted payment in May, in the 23 budget already. Take the $135,260 that is left over from the first half, let's call it the first half of the last half of the calendar year of 23, and an additional $180,000 for February through April of interest earned, projected. And that can take our balance down on that bond to $659,000. With that, what we did in November of last year was we used PUT money, I think $376, proposing in this budget $400,000 plus $300,000 as a rough order of magnitude for May through October interest projected, and that pays off the bond and moves that $185,000 that we would have used for payment on that bond back into our operating budget, plus an extra $40,000. We then come to the ARRA bond, which is very low interest, but we're paying $5,700 a year on that one in just fees. It's the fees on that bond are higher than all of our bonds combined. It's kind of crazy. That has $381,000 for remaining on it. If we took November to February interest projected and that $40K left over from the FY23 interest, or CY23 interest, takes our balance down to 101. Use part of March and April's interest in 24 to pay that bond off, and that puts $129,000 back into our operating budget. So I'll go down to the changes to the budget. You take the 185 from the 12 bond, the 129 from the ARRA bond, plus the 146 we talked about on Thursday night, that is anticipated revenue brought forward from FY23, you have $460,000. From that, you take $270,000 that we were using in interest in this current budget. Normally, we use between $30,000 and $50,000 a year in interest because the interest rates are low. Remove that $270 from the budget, so we're not using interest in the budget. Takes us to $190. You can then also hit the $156,000 that we're over in the current budget, puts us $34K in the black. If you take the remaining interest from March and April of this year that we were using on ARRA and the $120,000 in interest May and June to use up the entire fiscal year's interest, you're in the black to the tune of $149 that can be used at council's discretion.
In addition to the 183,000.
Yes, I'm sorry. The,
That's the total.
That would be-
yeah, that would be, I forgot to add that 34 budget in the black up there. And then that's taking the interest plus the budget in the black gives you 183 in discretionary funds for the council.
I get you.
As I look at a debt schedule that I asked our finance officer to put together, the highest interest we're paying out is 3.562 on the 2012 bond, if I'm reading this right. Nope, there's a 3.61. Our cash in our ICS account is earning 4.58. So if I told you, I'll give you $4.58 and you only have to pay me back $3.60, you like that deal?
That sounds good to me.
So why in the world would we use money that's earning 4.5% interest to pay off debt that's only costing us 3.6 max? The blended rate here, I don't know what the blended rate is, Karen, but probably in there somewhere, probably in your head somewhere.
I guess the risk is that if we don't pay down the debt, that we just accumulate the funds, accumulate the interest, that we might change our mind later and not actually pay the debt, or some other following council might choose to do something different. I prefer to pay the debt off,
For sure.
get it done.
Ditto.
Yeah, even though I know it's a difference, we're losing a little bit of money.
It's a
on it,
lousy business decision.
Interest
I know
rate's
it
not gonna
is.
last forever either.
But probably
It could
last
be a
another
lousy
year.
business decision. I think it's a lousy municipal government decision to sit on $13.6 million in debt. I mean, I understand if I was sitting at my kitchen table crafting a budget for my family, in fact, just borrowed $18,000 to waterproof my basement at 0%, same as cash, making 4.5% on a savings account. So I'm gonna wait until the 18th month to pay that off. That's personal finance, right? I get what you're saying. The fact of the matter is, we've got, what's the town's annual budget, roughly, all told?
9.5
I
million.
mean, we have 50% more than the town's annual budget in debt. That's where I come from on this.
And where does this bank balance number come from?
It comes from
All of it together?
all of the bank accounts we have at Shore United.
Okay, thank you.
So, in total, Chip, how much principal value of debt are you looking at paying off?
So the principal value would be $1.4, I'm doing the math in my head,
That's all right,
1.4 million plus,
all right.
almost
If I've got
1.5.
1.4 million, and we've got a 1% differential between what we're earning and what we're paying, and it probably is more like 1.5% times 0.015. So we're wasting $21,000 doing this.
I wouldn't say we're wasting $21,000. We're going to move,
It's an opportunity cost. We're giving up the opportunity to earn $21,000 more than we're paying out.
That to me doesn't sound like enough to say, let's just continue to be saddled with this level of debt. I mean, $21,000 against a $9 million budget, against damn near 15 million in debt, just feels minuscule to me. I mean, you can barely waterproof a basement apparently for that.
yeah, my concern, Jim, understanding what you're saying about the rate differential, is that the cost of executing these dollars against capital projects has gone up 300%. So I can't even keep up, even if I earn that money, I can't keep up with the rising cost of what it costs us to use that money against. That is the biggest piece of it. Plus, this moves,
So how does this help cover capital expenditures, this process of paying off the debt? You're gonna go borrow again?
no, I'm not asking for a tax increase, I'm not asking to borrow. My end goal to present to the council is, this is the start. We move 300K back into our operating budget. In 25, the 2016 bond unlocks. There's an opportunity to attack that in much the same way. And if we were to use just interest and PUT funds, we could hit that to the tune of $2 million when it does unlock.
When you're talking about throwing money back into the operating budget, are you accounting for the interest lost? Because we're not earning interest then on all the money you've used to pay off the debt.
No, I'm not accounting for interest loss because we're not touching the principal.
No, you're using
I understand
cash
what you're
balances that
yeah.
are earning 4.5%. You're using that cash to pay off debt. So you're not gonna continue to earn 4.5% on those dollars.
So we're taking, the first thing out of the gate is 256K off the top. The rest of it is interest as it is earned is virtually going out. There's not a lot of time for it to compound because it's going right back out. We've never used the interest like this before. So what we've said is since July, going back just 6 months, we've started taking that interest off and we're earning this. And as the interest is coming in roughly, we're taking the interest right back off. So the net usage, that the principal that we're using to accumulate it is staying the same, so the rate should stay steady.
But our cash balance earns interest every day.
Yep.
Just like the bonds cost us interest every day.
Yep.
And the cash in the bank pays more than it costs to pay the debt. So the amount of money that you will accumulate over time will increase.
That would be a scenario that I would say yes to. However, at what point in time do we start executing this money to serve the citizens here? It's accumulating and accumulating, but we're not doing anything with it.
Well, let's do something with it.
But right now, we're trying to get money for the plant, and we've applied for federal dollars for the roadways. And now there's council discussion about using the funds balance for projects.
Right.
And I think the way to go forward with that is a blending of the federal monies when we can get them, and possible more state monies or grant monies, with our funds balance to kind of make it go a lot further than it would. But until the time, I mean, right now, the budget is about 150 underwater, and that's using $300,000 in interest. I can take out not all of, but most of the things I've asked for. We're still underwater. We went from having to cut capital projects completely out. Now we're starting to cut operating budget. So we're on a downward path, and this interest isn't going to stay this high. At some point in time, it's going to come back down. I think it's the wisest course of action, and I can't parse out the numbers. I'm not a financial guy. I'm looking at this in rough order of magnitude with the numbers that we have and the numbers we know we're earning to say, let's start putting the money back to work for the town, and then continue our path of accumulating outside funding streams, our monies that we have in the bank to start getting some of these capital projects off the deck.
Is it accurate to say that 27% of the what percentage of the general fund budget is debt service?
The general, the general fund side, it doesn't take as much of the debt as the enterprise, so I would say maybe 10%, 10 or 15 at the most.
So 10% of the general budget is debt service?
Yeah,
Enterprise?
I would say is probably 30 to 40%, because most of the debt is on the enterprise because of the water and sewer.
I mean, to me, yeah, we can talk about sort of budgeting best practices and accounting practices, I think, all day, right? But there's no budget theory that says we should carry 40% debt to, you know, in our budget, right? That's a lot of debt. And I think when you look at right up against it, it's very little spare borrowing authority here, right? I mean, very little,
Less than 2 million.
less than 2 million.
In
So,
the enterprise fund?
The total budget. And so I knew this microphone wouldn't work very long. I'm for paying down this debt and bringing the money to the service of the town, right? I mean, I think, as I've said up here, I don't think you were here last time, Jim, but I ran on running down the debt. So I'm pretty committed to this. We've already gotten it down. It was, I think, 18 million when I ran. It's already come down a great deal. I appreciate the heck out of that. And I think, you know, $21,000 is there $15.7 million earning interest right now? Is that? Yeah, I mean, it's a rounding error in that number.
At the time that you ran, I totally respect and honor what you're saying, but at the time that you ran, we weren't earning 4.58 interest.
I understand. But
I mean,
for
the
me,
federal
this is
funds rate was 0, right?
I get it. No, I get it. And the time, we should have responded this way then too, right?
So what are you suggesting, Jim? Should we wait to some future point to pay down the debt, or just just continue to make the payments?
Make the payments.
Just
Just
make
continue
the
to make the
payments
payments and
and
let the
keep the
cash earn more money than you're paying out.
Until it doesn't do that anymore? I mean, the interest rates
Yes.
will drop eventually, right?
And we'll see what debt's left on the books by that time. I don't think the interest rate's going to go down within the next 5 years.
5 years, okay, yeah.
And we still haven't locked in. So we'll have, when it starts to come down, we'll be able to lock it at the higher rate.
And how long does that last?
6 months to a year, depending on market conditions. The approach I'm recommending, as I started to say, in 25, the 16 bond unlocks. In 26, the 17 bond unlocks. The 17 bond, there's 3. They're amalgamated. We can pay off, there's a 10-year, a 20-year, and a 30-year bond. So all of our debt that we currently have on the books is going to be here until 2047. It'll be here long after I'm gone, I can promise you.
Likewise.
Yeah. So, but the 10-year bond, by the time it unlocks, with $400,000, we can pay that off and put that money back. We will put 370K roughly that we'll put back into our operating budget in 27. So we're on a glide path that I think we can pay this debt off, we can build our plant, we can attack our top 6 road problems. We are presenting a budget in the black that I can optimize my staffing levels. I'm not asking for a tax increase. Our modest increase in utility rates is required basically because if we're asking for the state for money, one of the questions I saw with all of my meetings was, what is the town doing to kind of help with this? So I told them, hey, here's the increases we've had over the last couple of years. I know people aren't happy with them, but thank God we had them, because if we hadn't shown we had done anything, it would have made me pitching that money a lot tougher.
I've been quiet up to this point. I'm inclined to support paying off the debt. That being said, I do like to see kind of an all-in document. Not that I want to ask for a whole lot more work to be made, but to Jim's point, there is an opportunity cost to this. And what we just heard is it's not necessarily a phenomenal number. I would love to see one sheet that had sort of a forecast of what does that look like, and then, you know, any kind of qualified statements. So our borrowing power goes from X to X. To me, that's just a nice, crisp, clean document that if anybody were to come up and say, well, explain why you did this, or what was the rationale, it's sort of all in. And I think this document is phenomenal, Chip, that you put together.
I'd like to go back to your comment about the utility rates for a second. In any of your meetings, and maybe it happened because I haven't been in them with you, did someone say, had we not raised our rates, we wouldn't be eligible for state funding? Because I've been a lobbyist for a long time, and that quite frankly blows my mind.
No, they didn't say that, but what I inferred was that there was a common question.
Well, I'm going to just suggest that we don't speculate about what the state might fund us for, because I would imagine that some of the people championing our funding would not want it to be suggested that they want water rates increased on our citizens in order to get that funding.
Yes, you're correct. What I said was I inferred that because the question came up repeatedly. Have you guys, what are your rates? What are your current rates? You know, what have you done? So it's.
What are our rates compared to surrounding areas?
I hope I kept that in here.
These increases on here are automatic, right, from previous decision?
They went up 25, 25, and then
5.
5.
Yeah.
You have those in your house.
So, the total water charges in, say, Denton, water and sewer are 138.70, Easton 111, Ridgely 168.61, and Centreville 189.30.
Okay.
I remember it gets difficult comparing those because some have a base of 1,000 gallons and some might have.
Yeah,
3 and 5.
there's,
Just the
Yes.
average citizen,
Right.
the minimum bill is.
And do those, I mean, we're jumping around a little bit here. Well, I'm supportive of paying the debt down. I think it enhances the overall fiscal health of the town. Less the opportunity cost, which I understand pretty well. I just think it's good policy to start to attack, or continue attacking, this $18 million debt bill that we started with 3 years ago. And start to invest and operationalize some of these funds into the town, you know, on projects that are getting way more expensive every year than 4.5%. Right? Way, it's not even close. I mean, you know, what a Ford Explorer cost 5 years ago is not what a Ford Explorer costs now. And so that's not, certainly interest is not keeping up with that. And so I'm for paying the debt down, as you've outlined here, and I'm for continuing to do it really irrespective of it, I just think municipal governments need to manage their money a little differently than the retail customer might.
Do I understand that one of the ones you want to pay off is the ERA loan?
yes.
Yes.
That's at 1%.
It's at 1%, the interest is modest, but over the next couple of years, we would pay $25,000 in fees alone on that one, and it's more about putting that $129K back to our budget.
Do you have a debt schedule that others don't have in terms of interest payments, interest rates? You must.
I had requested this of Karen. I should have brought a copy for everybody. I'm happy to pass this down, let you see what I'm looking at.
Clearly, there's not consensus on that position, but is there a majority of the council that's prepared to pay down the debt as suggested here? I will say yes for me.
Yes, for me as well.
I'll say yes.
And I will join the yes.
There we go.
Okay. Okay. I will ask Karen, she's still got the microphone, and we will start into page 1. Oh, wait a minute, let me look at the agenda again.
So this,
Funds balance. Steve, did you want to, just, Council President Klein, did you wish to discuss the funds balance
Yeah,
further?
you want to see this?
it should be in the agenda packet on,
This is the companion cash balances that sort of compares with that.
Do we have a form in our docket here that has the funds balance?
yeah, it's the page after the debt schedule in the agenda packet. Yep.
Oh, I've got it. I realized my pen had purple ink and I haven't been the same since, so. What does it look like?
This one looks like this.
The companion
Oh, like all the
document
rest.
says, keep them together.
Two little yellow.
Two yellow.
Yes.
All right.
So I did a spreadsheet to basically show,
Goes back to,
All right, goes back.
Jim.
We got the total there. So
to show from April to September, our estimated revenues that would be coming in and the estimated or expenditures going out, along with encumbrances and remaining capital that hasn't been purchased from the FY23 budget, along with the bank balances. For the top, I just use general fund and enterprise fund. They're the major funds. They're the ones we write checks out of. And so what I show is between general fund and enterprise fund, even accounting for some reserves, we have about 7.3 million in fund balance.
Is it, so this is the 1.855 plus the 5.428?
Correct. And so that's just accounting for general and enterprise fund. On the left side, I just kind of showed you what was in the permanent fund account as well as the ARA checking account. And what the ARA checking account is, that's the money that we got for ARA, sitting there earning interest, but it reimburses the enterprise fund as we make purchases that were approved using the ARA funds. And then at the bottom, I listed the top 6 roads and their cost right now for the water, sewer, and paving. Is that right?
Yes, that's,
And, sorry, is it ARA funds or ARPA funds?
ARPA, sorry.
Okay.
I heard ARA so much while ago, my apologies.
So the permanent fund is part of fund balance, but it's restricted part of fund balance.
It is, but the 7
It's not
million,
included in that $7.2 million
correct,
number.
correct. I put it to
This
the,
is unrestricted fund
yes, yes. So that still requires the vote of the citizen to be able to use what's the 1.7 that's in the permanent fund right now.
Nobody's talking about that, I hope, but anyway.
No.
I was the last one to raid that.
well, it does beg the question. Jim, I know you work with it a lot. I don't know, I think the plant was bought back before you were on the council, but I could be wrong.
Oh,
Yeah, so, but,
I may be old, but come on, Chip.
so that 1.7 million, you could call it a rainy day or something like that, but it's kind of a rainy day that if you're in your car and you left your umbrella at home because you can't get to it in a timely fashion. It's earning interest, but I think just, I'm not proposing it. It's worth consideration of the council that be moved out of something that is restricted, but it's just a thought. It can't be accessed quickly.
So we got what from ARPA? 4.872 total? What's our total? Okay, 4.872. Clearly the bump up in checking is because of the interest gains.
Correct.
So we've encumbered 3.1. All that's on the farm, but the farm purchased the theoretical farm.
Right. It's on like sewer collection repairs, the I&I study, the farm. That's where that total comes from.
Oh, so it's not all the farm, it's
No.
got a couple other things.
Right.
only 2.5 is the farm.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there's truly $840,000 at least that the council could move into some other thing.
That's still ARPA funds, correct?
Right. And they can be used, remind me, just refresh me, they can be used for nearly anything at this point.
At this point, they can. When we did the reporting, we did the standard allocation, which is pretty much what most of the governments have done that I've talked to. So it allows you to use it for outside of water and sewer, the broadband, the general fund, streets. I mean, anything. Whedon fell under that when we did that street.
We kind of discussed it briefly last year, and the idea was using that because planning and design of the plant is something that will get reimbursed from the state, was a way to start moving and pay for things, and then the state reimburse it, and then we could actualize it.
Is the 682, 323 part of the ARPA encumbered number too?
The 682,
Yeah, the ARPA spent to date, is that part of the ARPA?
No. the encumbered is just what we've set aside, but we haven't spent yet.
Okay. Okay. And that has to be off the books, encumbered by X,
December of 2026. Has to be
spent or,
spent, encumbered by 25.
Covered by 24 for ARPA, I think.
I'll
Unless
double check.
municipalities are different than nonprofits.
I thought it was just, but I'll double check just to be sure.
I seem to remember FY '24 as well, but we'll wait. And you said,
There were so many dates on all these different acts that I
Yeah.
you said spent by end
6.
26.
calendar year, not federal.
Calendar year, December 26.
Okay. So I guess the question, the only question that I have is like we're sort of holding back in the way I view the world, sort of this funding, whether it's the ARPA $3.1 million, maybe let's just say the full ARPA, and the fund balance and kind of maybe the permanent fund too, for this wastewater eventuality, right? Whatever happens there. And I think, I'm sort of becoming increasingly convinced that we shouldn't do that. That we should figure out what the wastewater plant is going to cost to improve at its current. I think the proof is in the pudding here, that a big plan for growth is just never gonna pay for itself. It's never gonna pan out financially for the town. And we talked last time, maybe a few times ago, about, decisions that might tie the hands of future council members. I think whatever we do on the wastewater plant ties the hands of future council members. I think if we go to 1 million gallons, we spend, you think, Chip, if we go to 1 million gallons, does all this money that we're dealing with now get moved into the center of the table and spent potentially?
So at this point in time, we have not moved it. The thought of a reserve is accurate. What I would add to
No,
your-
hold on, but so,
Yeah.
if we go to 1 million gallons, so which is the
Yeah.
previous council consented to that, do you feel like all this money, plus everything we've raised from various other federal and state sources?
I don't believe we're gonna dig into the funds balance.
Okay,
I think, and if I'll tether to what you're saying, is there may be an opportunity that augments the federal money, which means we can say with the state money, we can do X. If we throw in some of our own, we can take it up. There may be technological advancements that we can also do. So right at this point in time, with what we've asked for, I don't think this money is committed to that. We'll know more once we get the PER.
back, which will happen during this budget process.
Yes. Then the other part of that, Council President, is we're going to be moving forward on the plant, and we've applied for federal funds for our streets. The plant in and of itself is a major lift. And then the number of streets we would like to do is a major lift. So then it becomes not so much a matter of executing funds, it's our capacity to execute funds and our capacity to undertake projects. So I would say that for the next couple years, that funds balance really won't come into play unless it's used towards the plant. or part of it used towards the roads that we would like to do. And then as these things.
Because it's not to interrupt you, because it's not, the plant's not gonna be done in such a way that we owe $30 million, today, right? Like,
Right.
Okay, so it's sort of the phased.
Yeah, the
expenditures.
phased, and to your point about growth, if we're looking at phased funding, and if we're looking at phased engineering, which, and phased legislative pieces, the phased engineering, it could be, so I know one of your concerns, and other council members have expressed concerns about the pace of growth, that you say, okay, the first iteration of the plant, we're going to have 1 million gallon capacity to discharge. Our filtration, we're going to limit to 800,000 gallons a day, or 600,000 gallons a day, or something to that line, and say, okay, and then after that, we're going to kind of monitor how fast we're growing. We want to keep, we being the council, a tether on how fast growth is going to happen, so that we're not stuck at buy right land and everything starts to pop all at once, and before you know it, we've got a number of builders already coming in trying to do things. So, yeah, there are a lot of moving pieces across time for this.
But the PER is gonna show us what expansion to 1 million gallons is gonna cost, what expansion to maybe 750.
It'll show you 1 million gallons, but it's going to show you 3 different options. One is going to be a sequential batch reactor. One is going to be the advanced filtration, and the other is the to be determined that WRA is working on that. So it's going to give council not only cost options, it's going to give them technological options and how you want to go forward.
So, I'm not a wastewater engineer, but it feels like to me, from a financial standpoint, a sound way forward is expand the pond, kind of make that top tier priority, as soon as we can get to it. Expand the pond. And that's in the PER, right?
Actually, expansion of the pond is in progress right now. We put the RFP out for design and engineering of it because you are so tight up against the capacity of the plant and the capacity of the spray field. Regardless of what you do, we can't operate not even close to efficiently the way it is right now, but we're like fighting all the time not to have a violation, because we're going to either have to go to stream discharge to get rid of the water during the season that we're not supposed to be stream discharging, something to that effect. So that part is already in the process, and the design of this through the PER or the RFP was to design it so that that pond would be large enough and capable to handle up to the 1 million gallons. That was included into the design of it. The size of the pond, by increasing it that much more, is minimal compared to the cost of, upsizing it to 750. There's no more energy that's used than what there is at spraying 542,000 gallons a day and having a large pond.
So what if we renew, sort of replace the current plant? I mean, a true replacement, right? At 555,000, it's all modern, maybe it's ENR and 1 million gallon per day pond. What is that, or, a pond big enough to handle a plant that's 1 million gallons per day? What in your, back of the napkin assessments, like how much better are things, not related to growth, but how much better are things in terms of wastewater capacity if we were to do that?
With the flows that we're getting now, you're at max capacity of that plant. And that means that's not taken into account for the infill lots, the business park, all the acreage you have out there. That's just by the flow that the plant's taking. We are in the middle of the I&I study, which has already brought out an area that we're getting about 10,000 gallons a day. But even if we are able to capture that 10,000 gallons a day, yes, that's going to add some capacity back in the plant. But you're counting your chickens before it's hatched. The study's not complete. You know, we don't know what hoops we have to jump through, let alone what the design's going to be to eliminate that I&I.
So I think, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but does a 750,000 gallon plant clearly eliminates capacity issues for the time being, and you have a bigger pond, does it still absolutely require another farm?
Yes, it's going to, the way.
Eventually it will require another farm. Does it require another farm tomorrow or in the next 5 years?
Yes, tomorrow, because the farm that you have, and then, again, since we've started this recently again with BR, we found out we don't have to purchase the farm, but the county does have to, we have to go to them and ask them to change their water and sewer comprehensive plan. But that farm can't take any more water, especially with the climate change we've been through, the rains that we've been getting and everything. We can't spray like we did 10 years ago where, you know, we had dry summers, and you can't hedge your bet on a drought year coming or several drought years. So we need to find another way to dispose of the water. At this point, with the treatment process that you have, just strictly an SBR, it doesn't treat the water low enough to be able to get more stream discharge out of it and stay below the TMDLs for the nitrogen phosphorus loading.
And if we had ENR, we could discharge to the stream more?
If you have ENR, it'll get you a little further, but you're just biding time. I can't say what EPA is going to do or what MDE is going to do, but you know, in my almost little over 35 years now in this business, that has done nothing but tighten and tighten and tighten on the restrictions of how many pounds per year of both phosphorus and nitrogen they'll let you discharge to the bay.
I mean, thank you for all that. We've got $2.5 million in this budget. It's been encumbered for, this will be the third fiscal year for a farm. And $2.5 million ain't buying
To get
no
it done.
farm.
The original concept, when we sat in your kitchen and made a phone call to ask about buying a farm, that's gone.
Yeah.
It was, oh, we're going to buy a farm, we're going to build a plant. It's like, great, I'm going to start my tenure with a big construction project. Let's go get them, and all of a sudden you find out, no, we're not going to sell you our farm. And then you find out you can lease a farm, and so we're exploring those options.
We can, but we can't, right? The county would have to let us.
The county, yes, thank you for that.
I just want to make sure we're clear. I mean, yeah, that money's not going to buy us a farm. Would buy us a few street repairs, though.
Got that right.
Would it buy us a pond expansion?
$2.5 million, I hope the pond's not gonna cause that. Who knows?
Pond
Skip it
expansion,
back
I don't
up.
have my PER with me. The pond expansion, I want to say to 1 million gallons per day was 1.9 mil.
And that number was before the economy went the way it is with inflation and everything. So once the engineer comes back with the design, it'll have a engineer's estimate for construction for us to know.
And does the expansion of the pond at the 305 farm, is that still helpful if the farm we buy or lease is 10 miles away from it?
Yes, if you're going to buy a farm that far away, or even if you just the county allows the change, and you're gonna pump it that far, you still need that capacity of a pond. There's the town of Berlin, for instance, they don't have a stream discharge permit anymore. MDE took that away probably going on 5 years, 6 years ago now. One of their farms that they sprayed to is 12 miles from the plant. So, and in the prices today, you're looking at, Chip, correct me if I'm wrong, $1 million a mile. So, but you also have to remember, even if you find a farmer that's willing to take the effluent, the county agrees to change their water and sewer comp plan, you know, as we petition for amendment. There's still the cost of the spray irrigation that goes on the farm, you know, and to get it to that farm.
But at least, I mean, if we're leasing it to a farmer, they're paying us for the water, right? We're not paying them to take it.
No, yes, you are correct. They're, yes.
Okay.
Well, let me correct that also, because the other thing is, one other instance that was shared to us is in another county, and they're paying that farmer to take it because there is no other way. You know, when, same thing we're running up against, you can't make somebody sell their farm without a whole lot of legal issues, you know, bad press and everything. Nobody wants to go through that, but, you know, that's the other side of the coin also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the funds balance?
If you're going to pay off debt, why don't you do it with fund balance instead of coming out of operations? They're both balance sheet items, and you can leave the, what is it, 400K on the operating budget. Do I have that right?
I'm not tracking.
You're gonna pay off the debt, the debt's on the balance sheet. Use the asset that's on the balance sheet. That way, the 400,000 or whatever you have on here stays in the operating budget.
Is pulling in funding, keeping money in the budget, pulling in additional funding from,
Funds balance.
You're using your savings to pay off the car loan instead of using your paycheck.
Intriguing.
generally
The
speaking.
cash is cash, it's just a matter of what statement you're gonna put it on.
Yeah, but it's while your children are starving because you've cut the budget year after year, and we're to the point we can't afford that anymore.
But doing it the way you're suggesting actually puts more money for us to
Back in
spend in
the
the
operating
budget.
budget, that's right.
It becomes close to $600,000 all told back in the budget.
I would support that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. We're looking at a very lean budget, I think. There are things the town definitely needs. I mean, once we have the PER, that's gonna answer a lot of questions about the ARPA funds that we're sitting on.
Would you want to do that in the current fiscal year, FY '23, or wait until FY '24?
Just a balance sheet impact, it's not gonna affect operations at all. So, right,
$6.50.
Yeah.
you can do it.
The next payment for the 2012 is due May 1st, so, you know, you could
Well, I would do it
always.
then, right.
We have to give, yeah, and we have to give 30 days notice so they can issuance for the sale of the bond. So, I mean, we could potentially do it May 1st this year, or you could wait until after the budget.
There's probably consensus for that.
Yeah, it saves us ultimately on fees, right?
Yes.
That's why we were paying on the scheduled payment dates.
Yeah.
You're gonna do it in FY '23, you need some council motion and action to do that, correct?
That is correct, and then I'll have to, I'll get a memo that everybody will have to sign that I can submit to Charlie Day at the CDA, and that would start the process.
Want to make that motion?
We make motions here, or do we need to make it in our?
Regular
council
session?
meetings?
Can we?
Regular session's not till the 6th of April.
We'd miss the,
I mean, this is an open session.
we have
It is a
it's a
session.
public meeting.
It's a
Right.
public meeting.
It's
Yeah, I
not a
think-
closed session, so
we're
we
good.
can,
Well, if he motioned, I'd like to second it.
Nobody wants to try and repeat that.
I'll vote yes.
What are we paying off? 2012, A1 and A2, and we're paying off the ERA money. All right. Given the prior decision to pay off approximately $381,000 in ERA debt and approximately $1.1 million in the 2012 bond, I move that we pay that off with a transfer from fund balance.
I would like to second that.
The total withdrawal from the fund balance would be,
I'm sorry.
and the total withdrawal from the fund balance in this would be,
1.4, 1.5 million.
And what's the balance?
and
Sorry.
it rolls.
Seven
seven-
point-
yeah.
7.283.
147.
And then all of that rolls back into the FY '24 budget.
Has no impact on the 24.
Yeah, the only thing I'll do, it will change that, because we won't have the payments due in FY '24, so I can remove them from the, which actually helps the budget, so.
Right. To the tune of,
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
$600,000.
It's 100, the 185 plus the
486.
130, so
Okay.
300,000.
300,000.
Some interest accumulated, right? Yeah, we wouldn't be using.
This is, has the imprimatur of our finance director. You're supportive of this?
Yes, and then what I'll do is for our next work session, I'll have those numbers pulled out of operating, so you can see how the budget looks at that point.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're supposed to have roll call votes.
Oh, yeah.
Ordinances, right?
For resolutions and,
Oh, yeah,
I don't know
sure.
what
What's
it
that?
Just
I mean, if
No,
you'd
I
like
think-
to, we
I thought it
can.
was all
We
of
get the
them.
rule book.
I thought it was all of them.
All
Okay,
of
then
them.
let's do it.
Let's
First
do it.
one.
Councilmember Worth.
Aye.
Councilmember Kaiser. Vice President Kaiser. Aye.
Aye.
Beecham says aye.
Here we go. First one of those. What else can we take care of tonight? Any other questions about funds balance? Easy. My moods can be fleeting.
Okay, I just want to make sure we were ready to
I
go
think
on to
we're
the
ready for
next
health
topic.
insurance, Yeah.
So with regards to health insurance, I am actually looking for a motion this evening, so that way I can prepare for open enrollment and get the plan up and ready, or at least notify if there's going to be any changes to the plan. Just so that you are aware, the overall renewal increase, well, the total renewal for us is about 11.5%. But of that
It's
11
an
point,
11.5% increase from current rates.
correct. But of that 11.5%, 8% of that is actually based on medical and prescription trend. So that was applied across the board to all of the health co-op members, member agencies. So it wasn't just us. The renewal increase for us specifically was 5.6% in maximum funding based on previous calculation, to help fund any the high claim costs that have incurred within the last fiscal year, for projection of what may be incurred in the future. So we may get some of that money back as we have received surplus over the last several years. But unfortunately, I can't really tell you what that would be. But so I am asking for approval of the health insurance in order to move forward with getting open enrollments scheduled and prepared and documents and everything. The numbers that are on the operating budget in each department, they've been calculated based on that increased premium rate, as well as including any proposed positions, vacant positions, and I estimated those at the high max premium cost estimate. So numbers may change, based on other approvals, so.
We don't budget for any potential rebate on the insurance.
No, we can't really budget for that because it's unknown.
Right.
No.
But the last refund that we've got, refund, I don't know what the term is, it was a handsome number, wasn't it?
So
40K?
Last year
We
was
had about
108, this year was 40.
right, in 2021, we received 110,000. So it fluctuates. I know our first year that we joined with Legit Health Co-op, it wasn't a very good year, but in essence, it's because the actuarials didn't have any previous data to move forward with their future estimates. So as we have been with them for several years, they've been able to at least provide some sort of a trend and pinpoint those estimates a little bit better. However, we can't always estimate somebody going to the hospital or any high claim costs for that, but yes. Did you have any questions, I guess, with regards to the health insurance at all?
Was there a table that I'm not finding that shows what the cost impact that you're talking about summarizes it, or is it all in the budget page by page?
So it's all in the budget based on, it's under the health insurance line, as well as the HRA deductible is also included in the health insurance. So everything is like lumped together. By department, excuse me, that's correct. By department. There was a decrease in the enterprise fund based on personnel being moved over into the C11 department for general fund. So there is a decrease there, and then the increase in the general fund because of that change.
And right now, across the board, there's no recommended changes in terms of each individual policy, workers' comp, that kind of thing. So we're year over year sticking with the same program. Is that right?
Right, unless, so with the health co-op, it's actually legit. So if they ever decide, based on feedback from their participants, if there's any issues or concerns about the plan, or if they can find a better plan, then they will look into like the health or the medical insurance, dental insurance, vision. When it comes to like workers' compensation, we actually were with Key Risk last fiscal year, but due to a couple of high claims, they could no longer support us. So we have then been switched to Chesapeake Employers. So we are with them now, which we've been with them a few years ago.
Okay.
So yes, periodically, I do try to make sure that I'm always constantly talking to our broker, seeing if there's anything better, always trying to analyze, what our claims have been. There are some claims that we just cannot prevent. But we do our best to make sure that employees are trained and investigation processes are handled. So.
And I don't want to detract from the budget process, but obviously I'm zeroing in on this point because I have raised concern a while back about a member of the police department that was treated very poorly during the workers' compensation process. So very happy to hear that we're with Chesapeake. And then I just am curious, not to get into detail now, if we did have somebody on workers' comp, I would be very interested in hearing what their opinion through you as the HR director would be, if it's been a professional experience. So, I know you're keeping your eye on that. I just wanted to draw your attention to it.
Yeah.
That may not be disclosable information either.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, because you don't want an employee talking about their experience because we can't even disclose
Exactly.
that
Understood.
information. But ultimately, And I did explain to you previously about that process before, because when an attorney is involved, then the adjuster cannot speak with that employee. They can only speak through their attorney. So that does delay the process, unfortunately. However, as my role is to make sure that communication is being made in a timely fashion on both parties. But I speak with the employee and our adjuster. So I don't have direct contact with the attorney.
And I appreciate all that you're doing in that area, so we can, I promise, get back to the budget matter.
So,
It's all right.
So, what's the total FY '23 health insurance across all budgets, all departments? What's the total healthcare number?
I can actually tell you. Where's my salaries page? No, I have it. Oh, shoot. I might have to do some math here.
Well, I just have it's obviously going to be a big jump, but, so here in the administration department, I'm looking at what appears to be the FY '23 budget for health insurance is 173, we'll call it 174,000. In the FY '24 proposed budget, we'll call it 249, an increase of $75,000.
Yes, and that's inclusive of proposed positions.
Oh, okay,
There's proposed positions, sorry, my apologies for interrupting.
that's okay.
Proposed positions, and as she mentioned, the high-end plan, so if we hired an employee with a family, that they would want the maximum plan, so that
Right. So whatever the most expensive plan is what I've used in my estimates for any vacant positions or proposed positions.
Okay, so this reflects the change then, just the next department is the police department, which has a higher salary line by a lot, but a dramatically lower difference between FY '23 and '24 budget. That's because there's not those staff additions in the police department?
Correct. Well, there's
one staff addition.
one staff addition. But yes, it's based on current. So if there are no vacancies, let's say,
Right, but what I'm saying is this is a much higher salary number. The administration general fund is $102,000 in health insurance total in the salary number.
The math may be more on a per capita instead of per dollar of salary. Maybe more variable of how many people there are instead of how many dollars are spent.
correct. So yeah, the health insurance is not affected by salary. And so there's 14 budgeted positions in the police department and only 9 in our A92. So that would be indicative of what those salaries
And it depends on uptake too, right? So if you have an employee that doesn't take it at all currently,
Right.
we're not
Yeah,
factoring
if-
that into the budget.
Okay.
Yep.
It just seemed like a big variance. It'd be nice to have the total increase in the health insurance line for FY '24. That'd be a good number to have.
Yeah,
Okay, a total increase, okay.
Yeah, for FY '23, '24, right.
I'd like to see that.
It's just difficult for us to make a motion if we can't even really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta be able to see the total. What's the benefit package look like? Do we pay 80/20? What?
It's 85% employer paid and 15% employee.
So
And that's regardless of family size, it's just 85, 15.
Yep, across the board.
we're paying 85% of spouses and kids.
Right.
Okay.
And there's the 4 different tier levels for the employees, so
they
that
can
and it-
pick
like so if
platinum,
a
gold.
spouse, an employee spouse, is not paying the same as a family.
Okay. Can we hold that in abeyance until the next meeting we see that number?
Yes.
Yes. And I will not be present at that next meeting, but I will certainly make sure that Chip has the data to
Thank you.
provide. You're welcome.
Any other questions about health insurance?
The 30th,
The end of service payout.
30th. So I just kind of put this on the agenda to let you know, this is the one for when employees leave unexpectedly, or even if we know, we've been kind of doing a percentage of salary based on each fiscal year, the money encumbers. So my recommendation for this year was to do a 0%. As for the last 2 years, we've had a small percentage, and that money's still there. The only department that you will see an increase in end of service payout is administration, based on possible retire, yeah. I didn't know how to say that right, but yeah, without saying too much. So I just wanted you to know 0% all across the board, except for administration, where we put what the expected payout would be based on the balances now.
So that's when we're paying out leave time.
Yes.
How much leave and comp do we let someone carry?
Okay, so for the comp time, if they are hourly employee, they can carry however much that they're approved to earn. I mean, if they decide, if they're an hourly employee and they're working overtime, they have the ability to request to convert that overtime into comp time if they want to be able to use that for leave purposes.
And it just carries in perpetuity?
It gets paid out every June.
So you can't.
Okay, you can't carry.
So you can't carry it into the new fiscal year, but as far as having a cap, whereas like annual leave, our vacation, is capped at the end of a calendar year. But then if anyone separates from employment, they get paid out their annual leave.
Capped at what?
It's capped at 400 hours,
You
which,
can roll over 400 hours?
400 hours.
And we actually had a problem before anybody else
Wrong business, guys.
on this council with a very high end of service problem with a particular employee.
And that particular
That
situation.
will not happen again because of.
Correct. It had been corrected in an employment agreement based on that position, the class, based on the position itself.
I think we've got maybe 5 employees with high balances.
Okay.
Typically,
The
it's,
policy allows an extremely high balance.
It does. I am used to, at the federal level, 240.
and that's what it actually
45 days,
was
45
years ago, but we had several more employees at the time who had worked here for 20, 25 years that could never use their leave based on the place that they worked, the department that they worked in. So council at the time had approved to increase the carryover in order for them to be able to not lose so much of their leave.
They could never use their time because you don't have enough employees to cover them when they take off.
And also, when you have worked here for 20 plus years, you're earning every pay period 7.69 hours. So if you're not using any of that vacation, it can accumulate rather quickly. So we have,
Argument to give less, right? I mean, you could make a pretty compelling argument to give less vacation time if it's just gonna be
Like a piggy
paying
bank.
people anyway.
I
well,
don't have a problem using mine.
and I think over the years, though, we have also trained and really explained to all of our department heads that, the need for employees to use their annual leave. So I can honestly say that I feel that over the last 5 to 7 years, we have been able to bring those numbers down. So
It's probably a problem in Public Works and Police.
mainly with the essential staff, yes.
Sure, okay.
Yeah,
all
because
right.
it's harder for them to take off. No,
Exactly.
totally get that.
Understand completely.
I would just love, and if this is too hard of a number to see sort of what is our leave liability across each department. If every employee of that department just up and left, and please don't do that, but if that happens, what would our total just leave, I'm curious what our leave liability is, because that's a very high cap. I don't think the state lets you carry over that much.
Do we carry that amount on the balance sheet?
Yeah. So we do have a chart, I know that Ashley has been maintaining. So every pay period, we track or she is now tracking the the chart. And
then is it
So.
somewhere in here what we pay out in comp time each June?
I don't think we have that in the budget. It is, oh, it's under salaries, okay.
It's under salaries. I would love to see that separate, if possible.
Oh, yeah, she has it under here, the salary end of service payout, no?
It's in the budget on the summary sheet, but.
Oh,
Because you just base it as a percentage of salary for for budget purposes. Yeah, I would love to see what the actual payout, like the last couple of Junes, has been.
We just started it last year.
right.
Okay, so the last one was.
Yeah, we're trying to get a grip on
So, right.
potential liabilities.
I just want to
So
understand
just,
what the staffing
so just
liability
under,
is.
yeah, I wanted, and Kip, thank you. One of the things though is that for the salaried employees, we are able to earn comp. However, we are capped at 100 hours. So in June, if we have accrued, 200 hours of comp, we can only get paid out for 100, and then the remaining
Okay.
is forfeited, and that's based on current policy.
Yeah, don't misconstrue my questions for me thinking like we should take leave or
Oh,
something.
no, I
But
just wanna
if
make
there's
sure
if
that
there's
there's
other
clarification.
flexibility, or if we have some massive comp liability, to me that would indicate that there's not enough staff to get the work done if people are earning hundreds of hours of comp every year. And so I'd want to sort of figure out what other flexibilities and policy changes we need to make beyond the budget. But like, what's going so wrong that everybody's riding hundreds of hours of leave? I mean, to me, that's a quality of life problem that we need to solve for.
Yes.
And does it cost less to hire someone than to pay this comp time out,
Exactly.
right?
This is something we've been looking at. We've talked
Yeah.
over the last couple of things. It's not only just options for compensation to employees, but to kind of look at the work-life balance piece to say,
Yes.
why are we accumulating so much leave? And I could pretty much name the people who have it and their positions, and some of that will be alleviated with MES taking over the plant. But it
And some
doesn't,
people are just like that too.
yeah, that's very true.
But to me, comp time separate from annual time.
Yeah.
If we need a ton of comp time, that to me indicates that the work is too much for the workday, and I'd want to solve for that in other ways.
Yes.
Well, in essence as well, it's just looking at the comp time and the overtime, obviously, for those purposes, absolutely.
Chip, you mentioned the federal's 240, is that right? The
Yes.
limit? Out of curiosity, not that I expect you to have this number, but since you're tracking on it, the 5 employees that you said are carrying high balances, just guesstimating, would you say all 5 of those are north of 240?
Oh,
Well,
the 5 are closer to 400.
And this is for the annual leave, right? Yeah.
just curious if we did adopt a similar policy in the future.
The leave liability would be a key number.
I get that for the audit each year, so I can give you this.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'd have to grandfather in balances.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure, but.
I can
Okay,
get you the comp time number for the next meeting.
thank you, I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Department budgets.
If I could make one more point. One of the things we talked about when we talked about the leave balances is if we were to lower the limit, was the use or lose factor that could kick in to say, okay, at the end of the year, there's going to be a sweep. So for instance, when I retired, my limit was 360 because I'd been overseas. And so in the last year, a lot of people don't take leave and they go up above the cap because they know it's going to get swept. But the other option when we sweep that leave is to build a leave bank so that if you do have a person with a medical issue or something comes up, we have the option to donate leave that hasn't been exercised. Just something to think about.
So this is also going to be coming up with the personnel manual review and policy discussions and updates.
I, from a policy standpoint, find leave banks abhorrent. As an employer, I think we should have flexibility and benefits baked in that don't rely on your coworkers not taking their earned time so that you can take care of yourself or a sick family member. I just think it's a rather unfortunate way to look at it. And so I would want us to look at what benefits are we not offering if this situation is something that's come up that a leave bank would solve for.
Yeah, my experience is when a leave bank is invoked, it's usually a major diagnosis, a terminal diagnosis.
Catastrophic event,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I understand that. I understand that.
And it's leave that would have been abandoned otherwise, is
But
what I
only
understand.
abandoned leave and not for employees who donate existing leave.
Correct. Well, you can
At the
also.
state, you can
You can
donate your,
volunteer.
you can volunteer leave. I
Yeah,
find that
we did that
icky.
at the federal level, you know.
So we currently have a policy about leave donations. So that is something that we have been, that's been in the personnel manual for years, is where if there was ever a situation where an employee is out on, caring for a loved one, or the like, for instance, the house burned down and they had to, take care of their family. We do have stipulations, though, that if anyone is donating their leave, that they have to, whatever is donated, their balance still has to remain at like 100 hours.
So it can only be like truly excess leave.
Correct.
Okay.
What do you start making in leave when you start here? Let's say you're brand new.
You begin accruing leave within the first pay period that you work.
No, I mean, your first year as a new employee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How many weeks of vacation do you get?
I think it's like 2, because we go based on hours, so
It's based on hours.
80 hours for any employee that has worked for the town from 0 to 4 completed years, and then when you begin your 5th year, then you accrue at a higher rate, and it's like 96 hours, so 2.5 weeks.
So it's not like, it's employees that have been here for a while.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because a lot of times, and typically what we're finding is anybody that has only been here less than 5 years, they never seem to have enough leave for
Sure.
whatever
The earn rate at the lower end is low. It's low. It's like
What do
three,
you
you start
max
like,
out at? What do you max at, 5 weeks or something? What is,
7.69 times.
It's 26 pay
so in
periods.
the leave, in the
It's
policy
like
manual,
120 hours
in the policy manual, my proposal
or
is
200 hours.
your first 4 years, you earn 4 hours of annual leave per pay period. Your 4 to 9, you earn 6 hours of annual leave per pay period, and above 10 years, you earn 8 hours of annual leave per pay period. Models off what the federal government does, and that sick leave stays 4 hours per pay period ad nauseum.
Which is typical, that's what we're pretty much
Yeah,
following
what we
now
do
with
right
our
now
sick
with
leave
sick leave.
policy, is that they accrue 3.69 hours per pay period.
I don't know why we do.
Well, and the reason, because years ago, they had given, the way that it was working when I first started, is that an employee would start, and in the beginning of every January, everyone would get 80 hours of annual leave up front. And what we were finding is, well, when they left, they would get paid out those 80 hours when they hadn't even worked a full year. So what I proposed and what was approved is something that I had experienced when I worked for Prince George's County government, that you're accruing that leave every 2 weeks. So what you work those 2 weeks is what you accrue. So in essence, I just did the simple division, and that's where the numbers came from. But definitely having it proposed for the new policy to have whole numbers would make it a lot easier.
Can we explore, and sorry, this is a little off budget topic, but if we're looking at changing the leave system, can we explore what other municipalities do in terms of types of leave? Like, a lot of other industry has gone to just pay time off. If you're sick, you're sick. If you're in Disney World, you're in Disney World. What are other governments doing in terms of that instead of doing both types of leave?
And I did do I typically, whenever we make any kind of policy change, I do reach out to other municipalities and other government agencies, whether at county level, just to see what they do. I'll certainly look in to see if they've started changing going to just PTO. However, most government agencies adopt different types of leave, such as administrative leave, personal leave, and have a vacation and sick, for those specific purposes of employees, especially like essential staff, earning administrative leave when they're having to work. But absolutely, I can see if there's any updates.
Just be curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does sick leave accumulate forever? There's no limit on how much you can accumulate, or?
There's no limit, and that's because we are now under the Maryland State Retirement Pension System, because any unused sick leave when you retire is transferred into your, or calculated into your retirement.
Okay.
So we used to have a cap of 480 hours, and that when you separated from employment with the town, you were paid out 50% of whatever total sick leave balance you had. But ever since in 2013 that we began participating with the Maryland State Retirement Agency, we changed our policy so that you can accrue unlimited amount of sick leave, because as well as any employee that goes to another agency that also participates with the Maryland State Retirement could potentially get their unused sick leave transferred to the new employer.
Got it. That's helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Department budgets.
All right, so from your packet from the other night, the operating budget for all departments was behind the slides, if that helps you find it.
The second tab.
Yeah, it's so right after the slides, and it should look like, yeah, just like Eric's holding up.
Need you to model that.
What do you got? Okay. I was going into here.
And I guess this year I'll leave it up to you guys to decide, do you want to go department by department? Do you want to go line by line? Do you want to do a summary of department?
I said line by line last year, and it was super painful.
Can I suggest, in terms of your schedule of how many of these we're going to have, how late do we need to go tonight?
I would say, what do we start, 5:30? Usually 2.5 hours, people's brain starts to, fizzle with all the information, but
Well, now, 2.5 hours started when I started my workday.
I've not gone to bed yet for my last work day.
I know last year we tried not to do past 7:30 or 8. It just all depends on how long you guys want to go. We're here as long as you guys want to be here.
I would propose, if I may, that we go through the general fund and the enterprise funds.
So the whole,
Yeah, for the first two sheets, and then go back and take the decisions that were made tonight, make some edits, and then come back next week.
Well, we can,
So
There's
you're
It's
more
up
we
to
can
you.
accomplish
do the revenues
tonight.
now? Is what
Yeah,
you're
do
saying,
the
is
revenues now.
Yeah, I have like 4 other things on the agenda after operating, like water, sewer, just the smaller things, if you wanted to look at them first, and then, whatever.
so,
Not that
okay,
revenue.
revenue. We'll do it live.
All right, so page 1, it gives you the general fund summary. The current budget is with a $13 PUT, as well as a 25% allocation of cost, which is the transfer from general fund to enterprise fund for the employees paid out of general fund that actually do work for the enterprise fund. So at the top, you'll see the list of types of revenue, along with the $400,000 PUT payment that we had discussed for the bond. I guess that will come out now, Chip.
And go back into,
Go back into the budget. But you can see the total revenues up top, the total expenses by department. Then it just gives you the debt service, and then if there is any transfer to or from fund balance based on not having enough revenue. So the front, page 1 and 2 are just a summary. If you wanted to start with each department, you could just kind of look at the overall sheet for that department and see if you have any questions by department. It might be easier, but totally up to you.
Did we get a constant yield report this year?
We did. I can send it to you if you want.
yeah, all of us, I think.
So the constant yield rate for this year is 0.5207. And Carolyn and I did receive a Senate bill, that they're working
Yes.
on that will get rid of the constant yield. I'm just not sure if it's going to be this year or next year.
just the notice.
The
The
notification.
notice, sorry.
The notification.
That's what I meant, yes. So I'll get you all a copy of the constant yield.
And we're at 0.53.
5.
Okay. And what is the overall delta between constant yield and tax rate in terms of revenue?
Oh, I didn't. Give me a sec.
For
so I
every
can-
penny of property tax, that raises $58,894. So if we're 1.3 cents over constant yield, roughly,
The constant yield's 0.5207, we're 0.535. So, yeah. And the property revenue for our current rate, 3,504,198.82. And that was,
So this property tax down here, 3.5, is reflective of constant yield or the actual? Or actual-
our rate. It's
Okay.
based on our rate.
Okay. So constant yield would take $80,000 from that total roughly? Right. If Jim's math is accurate, which I assume that it is,
I'm looking.
58,000?
I trust his math the most out of this crew up here, but
I guess whatever the,
59,000 times
whatever the assessed
1.4.
value is times, yeah.
Yes. About 75,000.
Said my math was strong.
great math. So we could, in theory, because of paying down the debt out of the funds balance, actually charge the constant yield rate this year?
It's definitely a possibility. I could adjust for the next work session if you wanted to see what that would look like.
I'd like to see what that looks like.
I was hoping we could use that on tax rate and repairs and maintenance. The savings. Probably good news to Kip. Here, here.
Where's the PUT reflected? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the PUT as well. I noticed that our PUT is higher than anybody else in the state.
By orders of magnitude.
Yes, I think if we kept it below 10, we wouldn't be as noticeable. Nobody else is even above 10, so.
We can't go below, if we go below 8, just we start to impact our budget. We're to the point now, Council President Klein had brought this up before. If this would be something that utilities took to Annapolis to say, hey, you're killing us with this stuff, and not just Centreville, but other municipalities, then suddenly it gets rolled back. If it gets rolled back below 8 for us, it impacts our budget.
Yeah, I didn't want to go, I was thinking like 999 or something, so. Something below 10, so it doesn't like stick out like a sore thumb on the chart.
We weren't sure, when we first went up to 13, how it was going to affect Verizon and Delmarva Power, because they're the two. And we've had 2 years, we've billed, and they've paid, and.
Yeah, they'll pay it, yeah, but I don't know.
Well, the first year they asked if it was a typo,
Yeah.
Okay,
and we thought, okay, this could be a harbinger, and then last year it was just, okay, here you go.
Well, I mean, this is all passed on to the consumer, which is why I didn't like it in the first place. The theory is it's passed on to a lot of consumers, but, and clearly it is, I don't think they have a PUT for Centreville residents on their bill, but boy, this just seems to me like it's too high, but I've said that every year and usually lose, so.
Yeah, I can, whatever you guys would like, I can,
well, how much revenue does that generate?
close to $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay,
Leave well enough alone, please.
and it's hard to give that up.
You thinking?
Nothing, my mind is blank. Nothing happening in there.
Leaving yourself wide open there, Steve.
I have a revenue-related question.
Okay.
Looking year over year, 23 versus 24, the increases that we're seeing for the 105 North Liberty versus Wharf properties, are those rental agreement rate increases? Is that what's driving the change there?
Correct.
Okay.
And, for next year, it's, we try to make sure that the rent is inclusive of the water and sewer, even though they're not paying them, we want to make sure, because it's on us, so we want to make sure that it's covering the things with inclusive of the rent, so, but yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, if you want to start with page 6 of the operating budget, that's for legislative funding, which is your guys' budget. And if you just want to look overall at each, totally up to you. We can go line by line. I'll do whatever you want.
I don't think we need to go line by line personally. I happy to if others feel like that.
The overall change in A10 was a decrease of $587 for the overall budget.
The one thing I would say, and last year, you know, I felt really strongly about keeping this in, was the donations amount, and then not a single anyone has asked us for such a donation.
We do, and I apologize because I meant to add it in here. We did get one request from one, while the council is considering their budget this year, for a $1,500 donation.
And that's Queen Anne's County Arts Council?
Arts Council.
That just came in recently.
Yeah, just in the last week or so.
Right, then I'm wrong. We have gotten an ask for it.
But you're right, we didn't really have any at all last year.
Yeah, none in 22, none until now in 23.
So the salary line here is only for council. Is that right?
Yes. No, you're good.
I'm going to expose my ignorance here, but is there some pension I'm not aware of that I'm slowly qualifying for here, or?
Pension expense?
Yeah.
That is, so if any council member chooses to enroll, they can in the pension. As an elected official, you are the only positions that can opt out of our pension. Everything else, every other employee, it's mandatory if they're eligible.
Clearly, I've opted out.
You could be
You
getting
did
a
sign the document, I believe.
fraction of a year or whatever it is.
Usually it occurs like when you are appointed.
Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
And substitute a box of Pop-Tarts for the funds you would receive.
Chocolate fudge.
Just noting that there's a straight line of zero for that last line item, liability insurance. Is that covered elsewhere?
We pay it out of Fund 1 and Fund 7 as a whole, so you only see it listed in two departments, but essentially when we make the payment, we make it out of the liability line and not the expense line.
Okay.
And for us, that's an E&O line, right?
Yes.
Can we take these, I promise I'm not going to do this at this level throughout, but the lodging, food, and travel and conventions and meetings are both far below, right? So could we take that lodging, food, and travel down to $3,500 to better reflect, and then maybe cut convention and meetings down to $2,000?
If you all agree.
Is that,
Okay with that.
That's fine with me. Yeah.
2,000 and then
3,500?
3,500.
Because is this just council, the staff that goes to things like MML are covered elsewhere?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think if we don't have the budget, my opinion would be, if we don't have the budget, then council can't go.
Right.
Fair enough.
And I mean, I have said no to the MMO conference every year I've been here, no to fleeces and sweaters and T-shirts and polos. And if I want to go to MML, I'd pay for it myself. I mean, maybe I'm alone up here in that way, but, so I'm okay with those numbers. And if we've met the budget, then people can't go. What are the dues and subscriptions associated with the council?
Those are the MML dues.
Okay.
Is that just MML dues, or is that I legislate and
only
other
MML.
things? Okay.
Only MML.
I do see a lot of value in MML, so I am glad that people go, but I'm fine with lowering that line.
And I'm gonna try it this year and see what it's like and decide if I wanna go anymore or not, so.
What would it cost to get the planning commission on QACTV? The same?
Yeah, 100, and it's 150 a meeting.
Do we know that QACTV has the capacity to do that?
I'd have to talk
I
to.
might not want to answer
Yeah.
that question. Right?
I have.
You just work here, right?
I'd have to talk to George Harvey, because I'm
Okay.
not sure if there's any other meetings that they do, like, I can't remember when Board of Ed meetings are, and
The same night.
are they the same night?
I feel like it's Wednesdays, but
We are every other Wednesdays before this, you know that. You don't know when the Board of Ed, I don't know when the Board of Ed is.
Yeah, I don't know when the Board of Ed is.
It's the same, I think it's the same night.
I think it is.
I'm a huge fan of if the option is there to do and it's a nominal fee for us. We all, I think, ran on enhanced communication, so to me, that's low-hanging fruit.
And so much is happening there.
And I would actually move whatever we just saved from conventions, meetings, lodging, food, and travel to air the planning commission meetings on QACTV.
A70.
Be 4,000. So you want to move that to A70 to cover QAC?
3,600. Yeah.
That seems high, because if they meet once a month,
They're having work sessions for the.
okay.
Well, once the comp plan's done, they won't have as many sessions. They might not meet for months, you know, so.
That could be,
Right.
that
Could be a
could be the
while.
whole year.
Yeah, that's true.
Can't be the whole year. I need the comp plan so that I can.
I think,
give it to
I
the
think
county.
let's call it 3,000, because I think Councilperson Worth is right, that they will wrap up the comp plan at some point. So 3,000.
Okay,
And
so I'll
still
remove the
repres-
4K from legislative and add 3 of that for QACTV for planning
I
and
think
zoning.
that's great.
Okay. Anybody have anything else for legislative budget? All right, next page would be planning and zoning. The overall budget went down 30,000, and the only change there was because the comp plan was supposed to be completed in '23, we weren't sure that we would need as much. And obviously, I'll add the 3,000 in for QACTV after tonight's meeting.
I mean, I still think the comp plan is going to be done in fiscal year '23. Lord willing.
All right, any questions on planning and zoning? Any questions about any of the lines? All right, next page is page 8, municipal buildings. The overall budget went down.
What is it, before we go, I'm sorry.
Yes, okay.
So 50K is for Chris. What's the MDIA contract services at 20 grand?
They do all of our inspections. You know, if there's somebody's pulled a permit, they go back, or they go and do the inspections, the initial inspections, check the framing, if they made a structural change, and then they do the final inspections for approval before we sign off on occupancy.
There's probably a revenue line
Yeah.
that we should look at in
Yes.
concert with that.
For when they make the payment, yep.
Because we collect the fees, and MDIA will bill us for
It's
the,
like a pass-through.
Right.
All right, God, I can't see. Page 8 is municipal buildings. The overall budget went down $3,396. Any questions on any specific lines? Kip will be happy to answer for you.
I see we're over budget, well, no. Big number in '21, less big number, way under budget in FY '23, just not anticipated repairs being made, or?
When we first took the building over, of course, a lot of it had sat vacant. A lot of the heat and air and stuff was aging and everything. It kind of hit us all at once, and that's reflected there.
Which building are you talking, 105?
A81 is 105, right next door, yes. You know, a lot of the systems were replaced, so we don't anticipate those kind of issues again, not as large as we had.
So this department municipal buildings is only inclusive of 105 North Liberty?
Correct.
Why wouldn't it be inclusive of the wharf and the town hall?
That was the initial thought to use A81 for. We just started it with that particular property and haven't folded the others into it.
Does it make sense, in your opinion, to have all the municipal buildings in one? Okay.
If it was all in one, you'd be asking about which building has what expenses, so it's probably wise to keep them separate.
Where are the other buildings shown then, if this is just 105?
Right, yeah. Where,
Right. Is that like Public Works or something?
D10.
They do pop up later.
okay.
And then the town
I
hall,
like them broken out.
A92.
A92.
So A81 okay for now. Page 9 and 10 is A92, Department Administration. Overall, the budget went up $475,000. And if you have any questions, Carolyn should be able to address.
Before
Or
we get-
Chip.
Not for all of them.
Before we get into the big stuff that's gonna take a lot of conversation, last year I sat up here and said things like 4th of July are what make a small town great, and I didn't wanna see it leave the budget. That said, $5,000 buys you like a single firework.
Right now it does, yes.
And so, not to cut it from the budget, but I would like to propose perhaps instead of, and pardon my language, but instead of half-assing our way through a bunch of holidays, we just like went all in on one instead of having like 2 fireworks at 4th of July and then whatever we do at Christmas, to reallocate that 4th of July and just look at the fiscal reality of we're not going to be able to pull off 4th of July this year. Move it to White Marsh, figure out all those logistics. So it's not even in town anymore. Spend a whole bunch of money on 2 fireworks, a whole bunch of police time, a whole bunch of all sorts of things. That just the juice doesn't seem worth the squeeze to me. So I would rather shift that funding down to Christmas.
I am, I'm having a difficult time swallowing the cost of the fireworks for the amount of, I mean, it literally is a 15-minute fireworks show for $20,000.
Yeah,
So-
I just think that's silly when there's other things that are going on in town that are enhancing that small town feel. The Parks Board is going to make the fishing derby annual and the movie Under the Stars, and we could do more at Christmas, and Councilmember Johnson and I are committed to continuing First Fridays independent of the town, all those sorts of things that like $2,500 or whatever, $5,000, it's hard to see on the sheet, $5,000 in the 2 fireworks that buys you. Having to then try to fundraise the rest from citizens seems silly to me when you can go to Rock Hall or Chestertown or Ken Island or Easton or Denton or literally everywhere.
And right now, just so we're clear, 5,000 is our gift toward that, and the county matches that, is that
They
right?
typically do match that,
Okay.
yes, yes.
It just doesn't seem like enough to me.
If it was a 45-minute show or whatever, and well, even
That's a lot of
that, I know, I'm
fireworks.
sorry.
There's somewhere in the middle there that's like a reasonable amount of fireworks.
No, I love fireworks.
Just we've heard, and me too. And I think,
Yeah.
and I did. I said last year that's part of what makes a small town great, and part of why a lot of people live here, those sorts of things. But it's just, to me, irresponsible to spend $20,000 of anybody's money, even if only 5 of it's ours. I mean, we're paying taxes to the county too. And we hear, ad nauseum about Christmas decorations. My proposal would be just to shift that into one holiday situation and give some flexibility in that line and just make the decision here in March that we're not going to invest any more time or energy into trying to pull off fireworks at White Marsh Park. That would be my suggestion.
Second.
I knew that was coming.
So I don't see a Christmas decoration line unless I'm,
It's the parade expenses.
Okay, all
And so
right,
I
so-
would suggest taking those 6210 items, all of them, special events, Independence Day, and Christmas parade, and just making that events.
Okay.
And giving some additional flexibility for Carolyn and the staff to figure out what it is we need for events more broadly. She called like every fireworks place in the country last year. I mean, it's silly.
Well, yeah, and it's not just the cost. Many small fireworks companies have gone out of business.
Yeah, they have.
So you're going to have problems finding a vendor, and then lack of supply is going to increase demand and increase price. I don't see
And
this
just
as
the
coming down.
police time required to, it's not even in town.
And I'll just add this, because I'm not sure if this is if this was a blessing that came about or not. We still have not received our contract for the fireworks, and I actually emailed them like 2 weeks ago and said, did I mess something up? I can't find a signed contract. I can't see where you sent one. They hadn't sent me one yet.
We'll email them and say, JK.
And so we haven't signed any contracts either for the fireworks, so.
So assuming we are in discussion on the motion that's on the floor here, my only ask would be if we could put a hold on this, maybe till our next budget session, which is when?
Thursday?
Next, so we have a week. Yeah. I had committed to doing an attempt at some level of crowdsourcing, and I know, as I've shared with.
I'm gonna save you from yourself here, Eric. I mean,
I just hear me out. So I'm not necessarily excited about doing that, don't get me wrong. But because that was put out there, I'll just say that I got a lot of positive feedback on that. So maybe give the community a chance through a social media poll to just get a feel for what the community's temperature is on this and pose that. I just feel like some level of due diligence there, just because I did put that out there.
I would just suggest that the community is gonna say, yay, fireworks. Good luck finding 20 grand for them.
They won't understand the trade-off.
Unless it's, we have $5,000 to spend, would you rather have fireworks or better Christmas decorations?
And I think.
Two
right-
fireworks, I mean, let's be clear.
Right now, there is a
$5,000.
group that is working toward raising funds for holiday decorations. And to quote our council president, I think you had indicated a willingness, at least as of many meetings ago, if that group raised X amount of money, that you would be willing to match that. Council Vice President Kaiser's suggestion here obviously sweetens that deal a little bit. I feel compelled to check a few boxes off if I could just ask that we delay.
Yeah, I guess with what I'm proposing, which is get rid of these individual lines for holidays and make it one
Yes, and I'm all for
festivities
that.
line, then if you come in here next week with a check for 10 grand, council person, and you can make up the delta on these fireworks, and it's a different conversation, I guess. But to me, $20,000 for 15 minutes, I mean, that's more than $1,000 a minute. I love fireworks, but that's insane.
The only reason I feel particularly compelled on this is when you think about the two events that we have per year, the Christmas parade, where, I mean, it's the largest Christmas parade, as I understand it, on the Eastern Shore, and the number of folks that continue to turn out for a 4th of July event. I think it's hard to just turn that off. All the reasons
Fair.
you mentioned are fair, and I think the other thing I would like to hear, if we can nail it down in the next week, is if they say there is no contract. To me, that makes the decision a lot easier. But-
No, I'm not saying there isn't a contract. I'm just saying it fell through their cracks. They haven't sent me the
We've not
contract.
signed
yet.
a contract.
We have not signed a
Okay,
contract
that
yet.
helps. That was
Yes.
the question.
Okay,
I guess.
sorry.
That's
but
what I
just-
was trying to get out, is if we do cancel it, we haven't signed any contracts
So no
for
big deal.
fireworks yet, so.
Does anyone know what the county's doing for fireworks for July 4th?
As far as I know, they're actually using the same fireworks company that we are, because that's who I got the name from. I believe they're doing it again in Kent Island,
Okay.
but I.
That should be good enough.
At the Narrows.
Be good she sold 4th of July up here, but I don't know.
No, I precede you in, no, we canceled 4th of July, well, we canceled.
You heard it here first. You heard it here,
We're owned by
folks.
England
We
again.
canceled the fireworks
Karen, I hear brain
last year,
buzzing.
Last year, yes.
and not a soul came in here and said anything about it. Not a soul.
We got a few comments at town hall about it, a few, but,
Comments like, why didn't this happen?
yeah,
Okay,
why
that's
didn't
a
we
fair
have?
enough
yes,
question, but not
yeah.
like, nobody came in here with sparklers and M80s saying.
I'm moving.
Yeah,
There were-
No,
I mean, just note that. I
We have
think
enough private
not in
fireworks
town
going
anymore.
on. It's a,
The fireworks aren't in town.
That's my
anymore.
big thing. It's like not even, it's gonna feel like the county's fireworks anyway.
And I think it's gonna be, I mean, based on the parking at the high school and Acme, and that people, a lot of the town can walk even.
And they park all
to
through the
that.
neighborhoods
And they
over
park-
there.
I mean, I don't think White Marsh has got the capacity to hold all these cars. And I think it's gonna be a fiasco. But by all means,
There appears to be a lot of agreement among the town department heads.
Can I note for the record that the police chief is nodding in agreement? Is that, okay, that's fair enough.
All right, now on to the far bigger ticket items than just shuffling $5,000.
do we have consensus to
Don't
at
make our
least?
accounting system suffer because of a change in policy. If we've got a line for detail, let's leave it in case we ever need it again.
Okay.
Don't have a.
I can just remove it from the sheet or hide it so that you don't
Yeah.
see it, and then it's
6210.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
6210.
So I am
Yeah.
absolutely for.
I mean, we could even say
Bundling.
just allow flexibility, whatever it is, just want, you know, if Carolyn comes and says the parade could be 10 times better with just $400 more,
Yeah,
it's just already in that same pot, you know?
fair enough.
It's all in 6210.
porta potties are going up in price.
Only
I
a
need
few
them for-
fireworks and one porta potty. We're good.
One porta potty for the Christmas parade this year.
We can use them to blow up the porta potty.
All right, there's a lot of big ticket items on here, so.
Yeah, proceed.
So a couple of the big ticket items you'll see was salary, which is adding 3, Carolyn? God, I can't find my note.
In A92?
Yes.
It is,
A grants person
well, for finance.
for finance.
We'll
And
go over a
adminis-
staffing table at some point that's just staffing questions, right, with ads, changes,
That would be very helpful.
instead of looking at it department by department. So
Yeah, I feel like last year it said what the new positions were below the chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, that's what I was looking for. I thought that was on there. It's not. We can do,
Just a
are
table,
you okay
department by
with?
department,
Crystal
what you're
has,
doing.
yeah, Crystal has it. We just,
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yes, I have it noted that I will print it for the next meeting.
Thank you. Software, 157.
so that software, I'll just give you the rundown of what it's inclusive of. It's Granicus, which is the iLegislative, which I know. We're still keeping it in even if you
Yes.
change, yeah.
Yes.
AccuFund, now that we have AccuFund, we use the cloud-based system. Unibilling, which we're working into transition to, which was approved last year. Civic Plus, which is for the website, the charter, the code updates, permits. Am I missing anything, Carolyn?
Code
It
enforcement.
also, well, the Civic Plus is the website. It is the self-publishing software, which is what we started this year. Instead of general code, we're now with Civic Plus. But it includes, we talked, I don't remember how long ago, probably when I had my first webinar or Zoom call with them. With Civic Plus, they have the code enforcement, permitting, and licensing module that I had talked about. However, the cost for a mid-year was a little bit higher than what we were anticipating, so that's why it is included in here. But this is inclusive of adding the permitting module, so that is all the building permits and tracking by the addresses, code enforcement, which it is a lot. It's a lot from all the way down to sending out violation citation letters.
We're getting a
via
demo
email.
on Tuesday. We'll
Yeah,
better understand it.
certified.
Does it have interoperability with AccuFund?
It does. I already asked that question, yes. Permitting and then planning and zoning, so it'll also take care of all of our applications that are coming through for Planning Commission, Board of Appeals. Which we don't have really a system for that right now.
So it saves how much in staff time?
That I can't tell you. I can't tell you because I'm not, Tuesday, Chip and Norma and Betty Jean are actually going to do the webinar with them, and they're going to be able to look to see what Norma and Betty Jean are the primary ones who do the permitting and planning and zoning, so they should be able to decide how much easier it's going to be for them to use than AccuFund, which they're using right now.
It'd be
Maybe
nice
it
to have
can deal
some
with,
sense of such a
the
big.
cemetery as well.
Pardon me?
Maybe it can deal with the cemetery as well.
Oh, I've got ways I want to deal with that cemetery, let me tell you.
I don't know if Civic Plus has that. We can always ask them, but I'm not sure if that's a module of theirs or not.
Does the vendor in any of these cases suggest any percentage in time savings? On the average customer, I would think.
I think we can ask that.
And then, can I assume that in light of all of those applications, there's a training tail that came with that leads to the 20 grand listed in, and I apologize if I'm not.
Yeah,
close.
the IT,
Safety, education, and training, is that what's driving that 19,000 differential?
that's more for like conferences or classes, certificates for employees, like to,
Why did that jump? Do you see why that?
The training, the
Yeah.
training line. So training, that's something personally near and dear to me, and that's something I don't think we have taken seriously enough.
Okay.
And that's just overall training for town employees. You know, I mentioned a couple of things that happened this year with Crystal and Ashley getting some certifications. but I think getting the opportunity to take classes and do things that will enhance their skill set are value added.
So this is a huge jump, right? And training is a great morale booster, and people tend to hang around at jobs where they feel like they're training. But my concern here is this just an arbitrary number? And does the staff have the capacity to leave their desks long enough to do this much training? I mean, here we are talking about people that can't take vacation time, they can't, can they leave their desk long enough to do this training, $20,000 of it?
We'll look into that. Part of my thought
Chip has
process.
something he wants to say.
Say something. I know this is just for A92, but you're going to see increases in other areas of the budget too. The other thing that this covers is updated mandates, updated rulings from EPA, from USDA, from the state for the way the government has to operate and everything. So it's, again, if you want to stay in compliance, if you're not worried about staying in compliance, then cut it.
And I distinctly remember, and I think Chip, if our town manager and the rest of the staff can assure us of this, when we've gone through the process of right-sizing different departments. I know our town manager and I have had this discussion, and I think we've had it publicly, the idea that sometimes you got to slow down so you can speed up. And as we've right-sized various departments, it's allowed staff and leadership to sit down and actually take a look at, are we doing all the things we should be? So as a piece of this increase, finally having 5 seconds to sit down and say, oh my gosh, we really should be doing this much, and maybe we haven't been compliant up to this point. In other words, there isn't really a year-over-year 500% increase in the training requirements associated with a specific function. This is just finally doing it right. Is that an assumption?
There are some organizations that I get emails all the time to join this, join that. And I haven't in many cases. Sometimes I don't see the value added because in some cases they're over $1,000 just to join. So there are things of that nature that I look at, I'm like, am I going to, if it's going to benefit the town, I'm good for it. If it's professional growth for me, I'm less inclined to kind of pull that trigger when the registration to join is a grand out of the gate. Mm-hmm. So we keep looking at these types of things. This is something, I'll give you an example. When Kip and I talked about the water reuse, well, that seminar was in Atlanta, so it would have been a little bit different to go to that. Sure. So we can scrub that number. We can scrub it down for you.
Well, I think, trainings that you need to stay in compliance are knowable, right?
Exactly.
Or budgetable. If you've got a training in Public Works that a guy's got to take to be compliant with the MDE requirements, I think you kind of know that, right? No.
From year to year, and I can give you examples. PFAS is one. Until EPA puts the law down on what it is, they let you know what may be coming, but until they strike it, and they only give you a year to come in compliance and know what you're talking about, know how to fill out the correct forms. Another one, the lead and copper rule. All of these fall down on, and that's just my department. That's not talking about HR and the changes in HR all the time. There's so much of that stuff. And of course, when you start cutting a budget, what just happened here? Can we nix that, or can we cut it back? How far do you want to cut to the bone?
I just wanted to add as well, just as another kind of support of that increase is the training also helps reduce potential liability costs. So the more training that the employees are receiving, and I don't have statistical data to prove this, but just hopeful that with all of that training will help reduce any of our liability costs, because that can be extremely expensive. So 20,000 compared to $50,000 to $1 million, or $50,000 to $1 million lawsuit let's say, because we didn't know the proper process, or we didn't, follow the what was the proper training. So that's something that I know Chip and I have been discussing, trying to remain compliant with all different areas, all different departments. So that's just my 2 cents.
Well, maybe it'd be good to see a breakdown of what
Yeah.
kind of training you have in mind,
So,
yeah.
yeah, I would agree. A breakdown would be great. I like the idea of an investment in our staff. I still have a little bit of sticker shock on that technology number, and would very much love to see next week a breakdown of that 157.
It's in your packet.
It
Oh,
is.
it's not? Oh, you only had it for,
I
I'm
had
sorry.
asked Karen to break it down. We'll break, because there's 2 parts to it. One was that there's usually a first-year cost, and then,
Time costs, yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. I just want to see, like, what is iLegislate costing us, and are we using it for the cost?
This is actually, I'll speak for that. Granicus, which is through iLegislate, we just paid in January, the last of the 3-year contract. I'm not renewing with them again. What I probably will do, so we have them again, we have them until next January, 2024, but it has come out of 23 and it's our last payment. Because I'm not really a big fan of it.
You can't open most attachments in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they fail, like, I would say 50% fail rate on attachments.
So
I'm happy to go back to a paper packet is my point. If Councilmember Worth and I are the only 2 people up here using iLegislate.
two are the only 2 using it, and I'm the only staff member using it. So it didn't work the way I planned it to work.
What does it cost?
It was like $3,700 a year. So the last payment we made was 37. That was our 3rd year payment in our contract.
Yeah, so that's small, but I also feel like, and maybe a code enforcement module is fantastic. At present, as we write 0 violations, I struggle to see what we need software for.
well, I think that.
I mean, I could get you a ticket book also. I mean,
Yeah, I'm tracking, so we can check. We'll see what the demo shows us on Tuesday to see if it is indeed value added.
okay.
Look at that software line 157 where we started, and you just mentioned it, the thought of one-time costs versus recurring costs. It'd be nice to pull out the one-time. So next year, we're not looking at.
Next
how come
year,
the
we're
budget
looking
went
at
down $100,000 or whatever.
Next
you
year,
know?
we're looking at closer just to 200,000. Vice 157 for this year.
So just because of
So that's-
recurring costs.
those are all
Yeah, the
recurring
recurring
costs.
costs.
Okay.
Wow.
And a
It
big
is
chunk
in-
of that was, forgive me, recently when we made the decision strategically to go to the cloud, correct?
Yes, some of it was. Some of the Civic Plus was bigger, Intercom was not as big, and then AccuFund to move to the cloud was a significant change.
And then this also includes the citywide, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, tracking all of our,
Yeah, we'll have a breakdown for all of them for you.
And I love the idea of implementing technology. It just seems like a lot a huge expense compared to the total size of the town and the budget.
The challenge is, and I agree with you, is, for instance, when we're doing the budget, one of the things I wanted to do was a 5-year budget, but we found out that some of the formulas in the spreadsheet, we were going to have to extrapolate out and change some things so that we were able to execute that a little more efficiently.
How many households are in the town?
1,900?
1900, a little over, yeah.
Yeah, a little
close
over
to
1,900.
$80 a household for software seems excessive.
I mean, that's a good point. We need to be able to explain that and justify that to our electorate.
We'll break it out.
Looks like there's a new line item on here, health deductible agreement.
Yeah.
So we just separated, we track the health insurance cost separate from the HRA, health deductible.
These should be inclusive of one line to track it, we
Got it.
separate.
So in actuality, health insurance changed $96,000. 75 and 20, no.
Correct. For the 892. Yes. Yeah, I did a rough calculation that the Total, let's see, general fund increased about 98,000 in general fund, but decreased by 76,000 in enterprise fund.
Some of that was transfer of personnel. Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions thus far for A92?
The liability insurance increase?
So that was a liability insurance increased, yes. So when I speak with Legit regarding our property and liability insurance, they base it on claims, they also base it on what property value, that sort of thing. So it's kind of hard for me to estimate it, but they do provide me with what it's going to be. Usually I try to get with everybody in February or even January as soon as I can get information. So they had informed me that for the liability, that it is a big jump, yes. So premiums increased 16%. Total cost of, let me see, it would be 105,000 total. 16%. Now, these are, am I looking at the right thing? Yes, I am. Yeah, because it's divided up amongst 3 budget lines. So the general fund, what is that? Am I saying it correctly? And then the A81, which is separate. We keep the 105 Liberty building separate from that. So it was 52.5 pretty much for the general fund and enterprise fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, so let's walk through the sort of elephant in the room in the budget in terms of allocation of cost here. So at the bottom of this, we've got $204,000 essentially that we're transferring from
The general fund to the enterprise fund.
exactly right, because the enterprise fund doesn't cover itself based on these
Well,
utilities.
basically what it is we have employees that are paid out of A92 general fund property tax owner money that actually work for pieces of the utility billing side, running the bills, taking the customers, answering the phone calls. So there's always a transfer from general to enterprise to help cover the cost that the general fund is taking for the enterprise fund.
But in this case, the enterprise fund is kicking it back in.
No, then this is the transfer that comes out of A92, and you'll see it as a positive on the enterprise fund side when we get to those sheets.
And this is at 25%?
This year it is. Last year it was 14%.
Last year was ugly.
Yeah.
Wow. It had been much higher in prior years. too.
Yeah.
Optimal would be 45%.
Yep. And it was at one point, and then we just, I think to kind of balance some, it helped to reduce.
Wouldn't the optimal be 100%?
Well, not everything that, all of us do is pertaining to the enterprise fund side. Some of the things were, the
But
property.
wouldn't you want 100% of the time that general fund employees are spending on enterprise fund work to be covered by the enterprise?
Oh, absolutely.
But she's saying as a percentage of their total time.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm
So
sorry, I
think
just, yeah.
employees that are 100% enterprise fund are in the enterprise fund.
Yeah, so I guess when I'm saying 100% of their time
Yeah,
spent
that
on
they're
the
spent.
enterprise. Right, sure.
Yes.
So that's not what, okay, right.
Do you actually track that time, or is that just a
Rough
number.
order of magnitude.
Yeah, we
and
did
this is
a,
a rough number, or is this just the number that works out?
every
Rough
couple
order.
years we do a reassessment. We had a sheet, I think it was 2 years ago, where we kind of reassessed the time, the hours, stuff like that. And it was like 45 to 50 was the ideal number to account for.
So if the software purchase would potentially make this number go down, You know, if it's gonna automate some of the billing, if it's gonna automate some of the other things, you know, that'd be
Add the
helpful to know,
customer
right?
portals, yeah, might
Yeah.
lessen the phone calls, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the enterprise fund is paying for 25% of the software.
So you mentioned, Karen, that that's done, desk audit, whatever is done to accomplish that every so many years.
Yeah.
Knowing that we're going into a technology-heavy year, is that sort of already forecasted to do that?
I
kind
can
of
pull the
staff
last one and
assessment?
we can kind of readdress.
It would make sense, just, I think, to us to maybe lean forward on that in the coming year.
And it would be good to see maybe from the town manager and the team, like of these investments in technology, what is sort of the essential technologies and what are the maybe nice to have? But maybe make a judgment. Because $157,000 one time to upgrade, but a recurring cost of a six-figure number is a little different.
Guess anything else for A92? Or would you like to go to the police department?
Was the expectation that we would burn through all of the departments tonight?
Probably
That
not.
expectation has come and gone.
Police is a big one.
Yeah.
I saw it
So,
on the agenda, but that really can't be right.
yeah, and so whatever we don't get
That's
to
4
on,
nights worth of agenda.
right, because whatever we don't get to, we'll create a new agenda for next week, just inclusive of those things. So
And
whenever
then-
you guys decide you want to cut, you just let me know.
I think you also, the later agendas are more, you guys go back and revisit for clarity on prior questions and things.
So for,
Bring our red pen.
and I realize the chief has sat here all night waiting for this too, but until we have, in my opinion, that job table, the position table, most of the increases appear to be staffing related.
We've got an additional admin.
I don't want to do this by verbal.
I got you. I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah, a full rundown of all the staff additions does seem like a pretty key thing.
I mean, we're looking at an almost $400,000 increase, most attributable to staffing, and I'm not willing to do that without seeing it written down.
Yep. I've got the note here to get that for you.
I would like to think that the improvement in software would have reduced the demand for more staff, so.
Actually,
Maybe not on the
sometimes.
police line, but
Yeah, not in the police, but
Sometimes
that's-
you increase your capabilities, your efficiencies. It allows you to get to other things that you weren't able to get to before just because you didn't have the time. Sometimes efficiency creates more work, if you will.
Can we do good? Think about what you just said for a minute.
I know. The ability to do more work, I guess. Yeah, I
So
feel
do we,
like,
do we want to hold off on the CPD till next week entirely?
it's just, it is a big one.
It's a 2-pager.
Either way.
I do have a question for the chief that probably is a quick one. Is what's reflected here include whatever the town's commitment is for the drug task force? I constantly hear that come up in other circles, and I'm just concerned that if that's not baked in, is that a bill that's going to come due at some point that?
At this point, I'm not really sure I can answer that, but I can get that for you.
I understand that, so.
I can get with Kieran, we can go over it and see exactly what's allocated and what we are going to be spending towards that item.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, almost all the increases that I'm seeing other than contract services are attributable to staffing. All the major ones, at least.
And while salaries went up about 10%, pension went up 50%.
Yeah.
But we've been on whatever the fancy pension plan is.
LEOPS.
LEOPS,
Yeah.
thank you. We've been on that for this whole year last year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
been a year and a half, 2 years.
Yep.
So what,
Last year and the year before. we pay after the fact for the LEOPS
And that, I
pension.
mean, that was a hard pill to swallow, but that there was no choice to be made there. Every other jurisdiction around,
Well, I'm not arguing with it by any means.
yeah, I'm just saying, for anybody that's,
The differential in the increase is what caught my eye.
oh, for sure.
You're saying there's a lag there?
Yeah, they base, like, this calculation is based on last calendar year's salaries.
Okay. And there was an increase in staffing last year? Or was it that we filled positions that were vacant that
That
we were
could be,
paying
yeah.
for? That's my understanding. Was it like 2 FTEs, roughly? Yeah.
Right, so it's,
Also be inclusive of the new position.
right, so, and whatever the salaries were as of June 30 of 2022, then that's what they're estimating for the net, you know,
Exactly.
that's what we're gonna be billed for this coming, fiscal year. They're always a year behind.
But looks like you're gonna be under budget this year by some 15% or something.
Probably vacancies or not.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with staffing.
Oh, sure.
We fluctuated too much in staffing.
Crystal?
Yeah, with the staffing issues, we fluctuated. We've been down a few employees for several months, and then we filled those positions, and then we might lose one here and then fill it again. So it's been back and forth quite frequently. I think that's pretty much the only thing that's affecting that right now.
And I realize may not be phenomenal science out there to the end that I'm getting ready to point to, but I know in the public works realm, if we're talking about plowing snow, you can do math on your streets, the distance to calculate contracts and needs. It just would be very interesting to me to know if there are other municipalities of different sizes that have come up with some sort of formula that helps, may not explain all of the need for an increase in police department FTEs, but if there's some sort of basis that you kind of point to say, if the population increases by a certain amount, if we add communities and we're adding this many, miles per month, per year in patrols, then there's sort of a way to point to that's what equals 1 FTE.
Sorry,
Is
I
that
think
his?
Making sure it's not my truck.
It's out front.
Not looking, Chief, for you to go out and do a bunch of homework, but just be interesting if within your circles and you talk with other police chiefs, if somebody's cracked the code on that to say, hey, this is, when I go forward to my council with a request for an additional FTE, this is the formula that I'm using, and every time we meet this threshold, I'm asking for another officer. I may be presumptuous in thinking that there's a science to that, but, just for whatever it's worth.
Is that you?
No,
Oh, sorry.
I was just trying to see if it was out front. That's where it sounds
It
like
sounds
it's
like
coming.
it's out front.
That's fine. Okay. So CPD,
More discussion.
more in depth next time. Sound fair enough?
Yeah.
All right. Goodwill Fire, we can maybe do this one a little more quickly. As we talked about, I think last time, this has been static for quite some time, decades maybe. We have not increased the investment in Goodwill Fire Department, and there was some consensus that we ought to maybe do a little more here. And I think they are going to make that request anyway. I think they're preparing to come in and ask for some more. So what do folks have in mind here?
Well, I asked, in their dream world, what would the number be? And it was significantly lower than I expected to hear. So, right now, we're proposing giving for fire and emergency services in the town a third or less than a third of what one would spend on software. So I would think if we increase this to 70 or 75, which I know is a lot against 45, but if 45,000 was good in 2000 or 2002 or whenever this started, it's certainly woefully low now.
No question. 75 sounds okay to me.
I would support 75.
I
was
can make
thinking
that.
60, but they could always ask for more.
Are you okay with 75? I'm okay with 62. I mean, I'd like to kind of hear from them maybe, what they will use it for, what things cost, you know, how this fits into their budget.
Right. Well, I know we haven't increased it since, I think this was created back in 2000 or something, yeah.
And,
We should
and
probably
It was
understand,
40,000 then or something, maybe.
we should probably understand the county's formula for reimbursing the fire departments for what they spend, because they reimburse their budgets. So when we give more, the county offers less to trade off.
there's been,
That's a really crude way to describe it. I know there's a lot more variables with their fundraising and
there's just been significant repairs, from my understanding. They've needed all new bay doors, they need a new fire truck. There's been significant capital expenses that they've had.
Will they come in before the, you know, we figure out the budget or
They have not come in before we get a letter from them, right?
get a letter?
They've not come in before.
They have come in before, it was a few years ago. I even think it may have been before we went to Council of Five and talked to
was.
the council.
Yeah, I did suggest that they might want to come in.
Yeah.
When I attended the annual dinner, their event and installation of officers, I took that time to ask boots on the ground folks, and it was no shortage of feedback on how long that they've been at the same amount. And to Jim's point, it just begs the question, if in light of what you said, there's some sort of different way in which funds are allocated to not complicate things in that way. So if it's donating directly to the purchase of a vehicle, I don't know, I'm just throwing out ideas, but.
And I do know they used to submit reports to us of what they spent the money on. I'm not sure if we still get that or not. It used to be submitted to finance, so I'm not sure.
the only time I had meaningful engagement about this with the county was in the tax set-off conversations and the finance office discussing about why this would be an appropriate set-off item or not.
Anything else on the fire department?
Does it matter how we split it up amongst the 4 lines to go from 30 or 45 to 75?
Only if it matters to them.
Yeah, that would be my question to them.
Let's maybe keep it where it is for now,
Okay.
pending maybe some outreach to them and some research. Yeah, I mean, I think let's get some more information.
Okay.
I feel like we've covered what we're going to cover tonight. Is there a citizens forum? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Thanks for staying.